True Crime Screening Room is a presentation of Podcast Picks with Jim the Podcast Sherpa. Please keep in mind that some of the topics discussed might be too intense for younger or sensitive listeners. Even Jim the Podcast Sherpa conducts some of these interviews while hiding under his desk, all while holding a stuffed mountain lion named Mr. Wubby.
Welcome to True Crime Screening Room, the podcast featuring interviews with creators who dedicate their work to unraveling true crime mysteries. We're now entering the investigation room in the Sherpa Chalet to meet your host, Jim the Podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels of the Sherpolution, and welcome to True Crime Screening Room. It is a side project of Podcast Picks with Jim, the Podcast Sherpa. That is me coming to you from Sherpaloo Studios here in the Sherpa Chalet, high atop Mount Podcastia, where I overlook the millions and millions of podcasts. But we're not talking podcasts today. No, we are talking true crime, and my guest today is named Howard Frank. He's coming to us from Pennsylvania. He is an award-winning journalist and a senior content writer. And I believe this is his third book, and it is called Lying in Wait, Anatomy of a Domestic Terrorist. And this is a true story. This happened in September of 2014, where the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks in Blooming Grove, Pennsylvania, was under siege by a sniper named Eric Matthew Frayne, and he was a survivalist and a military reenactor. And he was actually declaring war against the state. So he kept the barracks under surveillance and actually killed one police officer and seriously injured another one. So I got to spend a little bit of time with Howard to get to know about him. He's from Pennsylvania. We talked about some of his other work as well and the story behind Eric Frayne's attack on the police. So let's head over to the investigation room in the Sherpa Chalet, and you will catch my interview with Howard Frank, the author of Lying in Wait, Anatomy of a Domestic Terrorist. Hello there, Rebels. We are here in the investigation room in the Sherpa Chalet. My guest today is an author of 3 books. His third book just came out. It is called Lying in Wait, Anatomy of a Domestic Terrorist. It is a true crime novel of something that actually happened in his state of Pennsylvania, where he is currently residing. Mr. Howard Frank, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, your second book, was it your second book that also actually had to do with a murder in the Poconos?
It did. It did. A particularly horrific murder, not far from where I used to live.
Is like the Poconos people tourism board? Are they not happy with you?
Probably not.
It's like, come for the casinos and then just run like hell when you're done.
That's right. And the water parks.
Yeah, there you go. Be careful when you're going down that slide. And your first book was actually different from the both of those.
Right. That was a more of a memoir.
Okay. And I know that has to do with mental health and
Correct.
With depression and everything like that.
Yes. Yes.
And you're good. Do you want to, you got a platform here. Would you like to say something?
Well, I wanted to draw attention to mental health awareness and the difficulty it is living with mental health problems. I have lived my lifetime with major depressive disorder. And fortunately, I found good treatment. And for about the last 15 years, I've been symptom-free. But it's a tough road.
Yeah, I can imagine so. What was the name of that first book?
That was called Talk to the Devil, Surviving Severe Depression.
Okay. What I understand is you're originally in New York and you worked in the fashion industry?
I did. I was a co-owner of a blue jeans company. If you're old enough, you'd remember it was called No Excuses.
Oh, sure.
And we sold a lot of blue jeans. and then we took it public, did an IPO. I made a little money, and I became a writer.
Yeah, I was going to say this is an interesting transition from the fashion industry to being a true crime author.
Well, writing was my true love, and it
Okay,
just took me a while to find it.
sure. Okay, so the new book, Lying in Wait, is about Eric Freen, and
Right.
it was a 48-day siege on a Pennsylvania State Police barracks.
Well, the siege was really on a whole community, two-county area, Pike and Monroe counties, where they were searching for him. And he withdrew into the woods after assassinating a state trooper and mortally wounding another state trooper.
Mhm.
He went into the woods and he eluded capture for 48 days.
Had he been on anybody's radar up until then?
No, not at all. He was a military reenactor, but
Okay.
a very unusual military reenactor. He wore a Serbian uniform and had a Serbian outfit, a group that he formed, probably because he believed in the underdog and the government oppression, and he felt like that group fit his personality.
Okay, and he just felt that rebelling. He was really declaring war on the United States by doing that. You think, or it was really just on the state of Pennsylvania and just the law and order system?
No, it was the United States, the government. He thought the government was overreaching and interfered in our lives too much. And he thought that by his act of firing on these state troopers, he would start a revolution.
What I found was interesting that, I mean, for one person, he really managed to elude them so well for that period of time, even though the state troopers were using very high tech means to try and find him.
Extremely high tech. As a matter of fact, in his diary, he wrote how surprised he was that they hadn't caught him in all that time, which was an unusual admission in a diary to say, "I can't believe they haven't caught me yet." But the state police used urban assault vehicles, canines, infrared helicopters. They used a giant balloon, like a blimp, that had detectors on it and searched the woods. But as you know, the woods in the Poconos are filled with animals, including bears. And there were a lot of false sightings.
Yeah, they were pretty well populated with wildlife, as people who don't live around there don't know.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah, you said that that the community was also obviously in peril too, because it was especially like the surrounding areas. You said there were stories of like where people, if they ordered food and they were afraid to like come out of the door because they didn't know if rain would be out there.
Right, right. I talked to some people who were school children at the time, and they
Mhm.
were locked down in their schools. And one of them actually mentioned how she had to have her older sister take the garbage out with her because they were afraid to go outside. There were lockdowns, there were barricades. People had to show their identification to police. And we're not talking about just state police. We're talking about federal officers, ATF, and FBI.
Mhm.
The U.S. Marshal Service was in on the search. Officers from other states, other jurisdictions came in and helped with the search. And they really locked down a large area. At the beginning, people were like, yeah, let's get him. But after a while, they grew tired of being locked down and having to show their identification all the time and resented it.
Right. Were you living in the area at the time, or you were
Yes.
outside of that? Did you
I
have to
was
experience any of that?
I didn't experience any of it because it was a little north of where our office was and
Okay.
where I lived. But I heard plenty of stories about it.
Yeah, and I can imagine if you had to go to that part of town, it was probably nerve-wracking or feeling like you were going near a war zone.
Oh, sure. It was, there were barricades all over the place. And police presence was ominous.
Freen, you said he was a reenactor, but he was never in the military. You said his father? I believe was in the military?
His father was in the military during the Vietnam era, but his father spun these tales for the son of heroism and military prowess. And the son ate it up and worshiped the father. And the father was very anti-government.
Okay.
And that influenced Eric Frein and his philosophy.
And he was also like a survivalist, so he really knew how to get by, in the woods for that period of time.
Well, not only was he a survivalist, but he studied it. So, for a couple of years before the event, the shootings, he was heavily researching how to survive in the wilderness and evade police and master techniques like water crossings, using them, which throws off the dogs because they
Mhm.
can't follow a scent through water. He would
Right.
do things like that. He would be afraid of detection to the extent where he would wear diapers so he didn't move when he had to go to the bathroom.
Right. Yeah, so he'd be very still, and he wouldn't have to worry about, I guess, any other new scents or anything like that, I guess,
Correct.
to just get rid of it. So after the siege, were there any more people that were similar to him in thought that they came across, or was he basically a one-man operation the whole way through?
Well, that's the $1,000 question there. And I'll just give you a little tease and say that the police believed that there were other people involved,
Right.
but
I
no
mean,
one else was charged.
huh, that is very
If you read
interesting.
the book, you'll learn about it.
It's one thing to know how to elude capture, but like you said, there was just so much against him, judging by, how many were surveilling the area and searching for him, and with the methods that they were using, he had to have some sort of help on the outside. It's you would presume that, I guess.
You would.
And then, but there was really nothing ever, like you said, there was no one was ever charged. There was no other suspects that were brought in or anything like that.
No, no. And I'm sure there were plenty of people in the community that did support it, that were also anti-government.
Okay.
This is a very rural area.
Okay, yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Would that area lend itself to that sort of political belief where
Very much
they were
so.
supporting what he was doing,
Yes, yes.
and then obviously, even none of the neighbors were ever questioned or anything like that. They were just looked at as people in peril.
Oh, well, they were all questioned.
Oh, okay.
They were all questioned about Eric Frayne, so the police could learn as much as they could about Eric Frayne and where he might go, who he might stay with,
Mhm.
who he might hide with, who might be helping him, and so there were all kinds of investigations going on. And when I say the police, I'm not talking just about the local police. I'm talking about the federal government,
Mhm.
the marshals and so forth that were searching for him. This was a 1,000-man effort it was a military type effort to catch him. He
Wow.
was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
And it was just out of that one event. There was nothing, like you said, there was nothing beforehand, and obviously nothing after, because then he was captured.
Right,
So
right. But they knew or they believed that he was armed, and he was.
right.
And every step they took in the woods to search for him, they were afraid that they would become victims
Mhm.
of Eric Frein because he obviously showed that he had skills as a sniper.
Right. And before the assault on the two officers, were there any signs, or this was just like an out of the blue thing, like an ordinary day, and all of a sudden shots rang out?
Well, when you say signs, he was an odd character. He was kind of introverted, a loner, the
Mhm.
self-described loner. But we all know people like that.
Right.
So it's hard to say.
Right. There could be little things that nobody would interpret as a sign, but maybe it was there all along.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just wondering, like, were there any out and out messages that, oh, beware after, a certain date that something is going to happen, or there was nothing like that. That was
No, nothing like that.
right. It wasn't like they were on alert for something to happen. It just happened unexpectedly.
Right, right.
Oh,
They had no idea something like this would happen.
so what else did you like learn about Frame when you were researching your book?
Well, I thought I found it very odd that he was surprised that he hadn't been caught, but he committed this crime, and it didn't seem like, I mean, he had an escape plan, which was his car, but he wrecked that right away.
Mhm.
And he was on foot most of the time. And the fact that he was surprised that they didn't capture him kind of surprised me a little bit, because he obviously observed these men and these machines searching for him while he was hiding in the woods. And he probably assumed that he would be caught sooner or later,
Mhm.
which he was.
Right. You think he had kind of like the air of invincibility for a good portion of that time? Like they're not going to catch me. I'm too smart for them.
I think it was exactly the opposite. I think he was like, I can't believe these guys haven't caught me yet.
So he was really just kind of running maybe on instinct, I guess.
Well, using his skills
Yeah.
that he studied up on
Sure.
and that he learned as an enactor, as a reenactor.
It's a weird kind of background to have for someone who's puts himself in that position, that he really didn't have that formal military background, just really influenced, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Well, he didn't, but he really got into the reenactor culture and
Mhm.
really studied strategies and behaviors. He used to smoke Bosnian cigarettes, Serbian cigarettes, I'm
Mhm.
sorry. He took it all the way. I mean, his uniform was authentic, and even his arms were, I believe, Yugoslavian. So he really studied this. And I guess you could say he had a certain amount of military self-training from these reenactments that he took a lot more seriously than the rest of the people who participated, who for them it was a weekend hiking expedition.
Right.
And for Frayne, it was the real deal.
Sure. Yeah, he just took it to a whole new level, obviously.
Correct.
So, yeah. What about his family? I mean, were they shocked by this, or were they kind of like, well, yeah, we figured it was going to happen sooner or later?
Well, his mother was in denial most of the time,
Mhm.
and I tried reaching out to the family, and they never responded to me. I also tried to reach out to Eric in prison,
Mhm.
and he didn't respond to me either. So I don't know exactly what they were thinking or feeling, except for the reports that I've read. And Eric was very anti-government. And so was his father. And his mother was more like the victim.
Right. I guess probably felt powerless in that whole situation where she just probably kept quiet, and, and there really wasn't there much that she could really do about it.
Right.
While you're talking to me, I get the feeling like you've got another book in mind that's coming up. Don't ask me why. I just do.
Well, my agent had recommended another story to me, and I'm contemplating it,
Okay.
but I'm still recovering from this one.
Okay. Yeah.
It
Well,
takes a lot to research a book like this.
how long did it take you to do this book?
About 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that goes into it. There were about 3,000 pages of court transcripts that I had to read through, and that was pretty intense.
Mhm.
And then interviews I did and things like that. So it was a pretty intense process. And then, of course, writing the
Of course. Yeah. Just piecing it all together and presenting that little piece of terror as as it appears.
right.
If people want to find you, you said that you're mostly on LinkedIn and Facebook, right?
Yeah, mostly Facebook, they'll see my posts. LinkedIn only once in a while. I also have an email address if people want to talk about the book. Are you interested in that?
You can give it out if you want.
Sure. It's howardfrankmedia@gmail.com.
Okay.
And they can talk about the book with me. They may have, I found from my last book, I got a lot of hateful mail from people who didn't think I should write about someone else's tragedy. So that was an interesting experience that I'm anticipating again.
That is unusual. I mean, I can understand maybe people, if they have some sort of a connection to the tragedy, they might not want to see it but maybe just as a general opinion, it is reporting. Ultimately, you're not fabricating facts or anything like that. It is, these are events that actually happened, and you did it based on on hard evidence.
Well, these are people who didn't read the book, just didn't like the idea of me writing about it. And that's what I am, is a journalist.
Right.
And I just report the facts. I don't have any feelings about it. I don't have any predisposition. I just collect the facts and write about them.
Yeah. And the book is written, in a very factual manner. There's really nothing that, for all that Freeing did, you don't take any sort of bias against him. It was just, this was a man who had these issues, and then he decided that this was in his best interest to support his political beliefs, to attack, the police and the town and the surrounding area.
Which is a very bizarre mindset to think that this would set off a revolution. And the book really goes into the psychology of why he did it.
Mm-hmm.
And where his head was at. I also have a degree in psychology, and I tried to study exactly what his mind frame was and what kind of people do these types of things. So I get into that.
And the scary thing is, there may be more people like Frayne that are out there too.
Oh, no doubt. We see it all the time.
Yeah. There are a lot of stories about anarchists and people of that sort. Some of them may be, not prone to violence and more prone to philosophy, but it's the ones that are prone to violence that everybody else has to worry about.
That's right. And we see it whether it's at school shootings or attacks on religious centers and things like that.
His name is Howard Frank. Again, the book that is out is called Lying in Wait: Anatomy of a Domestic Terrorist. Howard, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much to Howard Frank for coming on the show. Make sure you check out Lying in Wait. The link to buy the book is in the show notes, and it'll take you, I believe, to Amazon, where you can make a purchase of a really spine-chilling book. Maybe what's not so spine-chilling, on Saturdays we have Sherpa Selects, where you can hear some of my favorite episodes in our first 10 seasons that I get to throw up on, not to throw up, but that I get to throw up on our YouTube channel. You can hear them if you missed them the first time around, sounding a little bit prettier, I might add. And if you want to get in touch with me on social media, Sherpalution is the word that you need on Instagram, Threads, and Sherpalution with the number 1 after it on TikTok. That will do it for me. Next week, we're doing our season 15 wrap-up, and we will have some Sherpa samples along with it. So I hope that you will be ready and get your podcast playlist ready, because I think there might be some shows that you might want to add to your podcast playlist, in addition to this one, I hope. And until then, I say to you, Viva la Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to True Crime Screening Room. Subscribe to the show on podcast apps or the Sherpalution YouTube page. Until then, stay away from evil. And more important, viva la Sherpalution.